You just dive in and you just keep learning and growing. And if you mess up, who cares? You want to listen to your clients and see what they need, but you also, I think you need to have the discipline on sticking what your core strengths are. You want to work with clients who treat you as a partner. Sometimes you have to send some of your nickel and dime clients to your competitors. You worry about what other people think. Well, other people might think about you for about 3 minutes and then they go back to their own life. So don't beat yourself up.
Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. So glad you're here today. I have a great guest. His name is Damon Lembi. He is the CEO of Learnit, a global leader in corporate training solutions that has upskilled more than 1.8 million professionals in the past 27 years. And it's a position that he started out as a receptionist. So talk about moving up the ladder. And prior to joining Learnit, Damon was an elite baseball player who played on some of the best college teams in the country, nearly went pro, and he's since devoted his career to leveling up his team and the teams of his clients. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Learnit All Leader, Mindset, Traits, and Tools, which is available on Amazon. And he's joining me today. Thanks for being here, Damon. Appreciate it.
Adam, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks. And we share kind of a common theme within our careers. Not that I was ever a nearly pro baseball player. I was far from it, but we both joined in on the family business, and there's a lot of paths we can go down there because there's just a lot of cultural questions we have. You know, a lot of the ideas of feeling like self-worth, of being in that position. I'd love to kind of dig into that a little bit about what your experience has been like joining the family business nearly 30 years ago or so, and how you've evolved in that. Can you kind of touch on that?
Sure. So again, I'm Damon Lembi, and really my background story is that I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in a town called Burlingame, oldest of 4 kids, fabulous parents. Most of my life, Adam, was really dedicated to playing sports, and I was fortunate in high school to be drafted in the 13th round by the Atlanta Braves. And that kind of led me to my first really tough decision. Do I go minor leagues or do I got a full ride to Pepperdine University and down in Malibu. And I went the Pepperdine route. And that's because I really believed in the vision that our coach had. And long story short, I came in, I was a high school All-American. I came in and I was pretty intimidated. I was like, everybody's as good as I am or better. Do I even belong here? I dealt with a lot of fear, a lot of imposter syndrome. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but it was really going to help me, for the rest of my life. Anyways, the vision that our coach had was to win the College World Series. And for a small school like Pepperdine, that's a pretty moonshot vision. So I got hurt, homesick. I left. And sure enough, Adam, they won the College World Series the next year, which is awesome. I had to go to junior college. They didn't have you couldn't just transfer to a D1 school. I played for a legendary coach there named John Nochi. And that was a step back, and you had to kind of swallow your pride, And then I ended up at Arizona State, which is a great school that a lot of people told me not to go to. They said, why don't you go to a smaller D1 school? But I kind of said, forget it. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to put my fear aside, and just see what happens. And that was huge for me. I worked really hard. I not only made the team, I was a starting first baseman, played every game, was all league, hit a home run in the College World Series that my wife, so tired of hearing that story. And, but then it's time to move on. And I'm like, okay, now's my chance to go back and get drafted again. And unfortunately, didn't get drafted, didn't want to really go the independent route. I was pretty down, really down. And, like a lot of athletes and other people, my identity was a baseball player. And here I was 22 years old, and I was at the crossroads, like, what do I do now? I was really fortunate, like you mentioned, it's like I came from a family that had a very large real estate company for a long time in San Francisco, one of the biggest. My dad was a phenomenal entrepreneur. Unfortunately, he died in 2010 of cancer, a young age. But we had everything from savings and loans to shopping centers to even a Chinese restaurant. But I'm dating myself, but in June of 95, when my baseball was ending, he also started this computer training company called Learnit. And he did that because a lot of entrepreneurs want to solve their own problems. And he wanted to digitize our portfolio. He didn't like these long, boring classes, so he just came up with the idea and did it. I started as a receptionist, like you said, because I was unsure. I was unsure if I had any skills, and so I wanted to, come in because my whole life I was just played baseball or whatever, I mean, I got a full ride. I was fortunate to play all over the country and the world. So I started as a receptionist, and I also wanted to prove to the other 15, 20 people that worked there that it wasn't just my dad. In my book, I call it lucky curse. Like, it's like, you're fortunate to have this, family to be in, but it's also a curse because it's like you got to kind of work harder to prove that you belong. And, fast forward over about 7 years, I did everything from to teach classes to do sales. That when the CEO wasn't working out, I took over. I threw my hat in the ring and said, "Hey, give me a shot." My dad's like, "You got it, kid." And here I am, 28 years later, still here. And it's been I never in my life thought I would be in learning and development. But I've loved it. I've loved it. And even though my dad started the business, I always give him credit. My mom was huge in helping design it. And I learned a lot from my grandfather, who's like a legendary San Francisco guy, Frank Lembi. But my dad came up with the idea for Learnit. He never really worked at Learnit. I always just really, and I don't know, I'm curious to see what you think, Adam, too, but I just wanted to make him proud,
Right.
And so I rolled up my sleeves and here we are.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you touched on that. I mean, and you're right. There's a lot of elements of when you're coming into the legacy of a company, and you're taking it over. A lot of times you don't realize maybe, and you said it's kind of a blessing and a curse. I kind of feel what you're saying there, because especially with the weight of an entire legacy, of a family legacy too, and that's all often heavy, and you often think to yourself, did I get here, because of merit, or was there something else, or so there is a lot of that imposter syndrome that goes into play there. And to your point, you feel like you're just you have to work harder in a lot of ways in order to prove yourself and make everybody proud. I want to kind of go back because I'm really inspired by the baseball story, and I would have to imagine that it had to be heartbreaking to kind of go back and not get drafted, especially after a great end of the career where you're in the College World Series, you're starting first baseman, you're hitting a home run in the World Series. How did I don't know if this is a question you can answer, but how did you not get drafted at that point? It sounds like you had everything going for you there.
Well, that is a great question. And the real tough thing was about 10 other people on our team got drafted, some that weren't even playing, some that were just had, good talent. I think the reason why, to be totally honest, why I didn't get drafted was I think maybe the scouts thought that I peaked my potential because I was a great hitter, but I was kind of a slow. I wasn't a great defensive player, and I was kind of slow. And this before Moneyball, but I was second in the league in hitting. I had a great, it was really, really difficult seeing these other guys getting that call back in the day, getting the call. My roommate, my best friend at the time, Jacob Cruz, was a first round draft choice for the Giants, and Jacob, he called me one time in his first year in the minor leagues, and he said, I fouled off an inside fastball, and if you would have crushed that pitch, you should be here too, But yeah, I think I always thought that you would play until you couldn't compete, and I could have taken the independent route. I was just depressed. I was depressed, and so I just have to think that, obviously I wasn't an attitude problem. I wasn't anything like that. And I thought I was told I would be drafted between the 8th and 15th round. So, yeah, major setback, but everything happens for a reason, and that's a tough life anyways. Very few people make it. I always thought I would get the opportunity, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. And it's always interesting when I talk to people who have kind of gone through that process of being drafted, it seems like there's a lot of steps between the idea of getting drafted and then actually playing your Major League Baseball. I mean, there's like AAA, AA. how does that work? I mean, is it you're drafted in the rounds, they put you through the AAA for trial periods, or what does that kind of look like?
It's probably much different now than it was 25 years ago, but really, when I got drafted out of high school, I would have been the third baseman on the team with Chipper Jones as the shortstop in Pulaski, West Virginia, for the rookie ball team. And so it kind of depends on how you develop. If you're a college player, you usually start at AA. If you're high school, you start in the lower levels, and but it's a tough path. I mean, a lot of people don't make it more than a couple of years, and some of the unfortunate ones, they kind of bounce around for 5 or 10 years. And part of that is, and I try to talk about this in my book and just through some of the informal mentoring I do with ex-athletes, is they just kind of stick it out because they don't think they can do anything else. They think that they have to either keep playing minor league baseball or get a coaching job. But yeah, that's pretty much how it works. You have some guys who go straight from AA to the big leagues. But only like 1 or 2% ever make it. And it's really, and talking to my buddies who have make it, sometimes it's a lot of luck. Somebody has to get hurt, and you get a shot. And when you get that shot, you got to take advantage of it, and make it happen. And it's a lot of it's mental. Doesn't matter who they are, but some of the best players I ever played with, they're superstars in college. They get into the minor leagues, and in batting practice, they can hit the ball 500 feet. Their first time up, they chase a slider in the dirt, strike out. It's in their head. They're done. So there's that old saying, $1 million body, 10-cent head. So there's a lot of steps or factors or however you want to call it for that journey.
Yeah, it always has seemed like a very arduous path to get to the professional side of it. But how, you mentioned it was obviously a tough time for you after that, moving into career mode, trying to figure out what you were doing. How did you work through some of that depression that you had? How'd you work through that?
At some point, I just told myself, there's two paths you can go. You could live in the past and be a victim and make excuses, or you could say, screw it. I'm gonna dive head. I'm one of those guys that, you probably are too, that whatever I decide to do, I just go full force, and like I mentioned earlier, I had to do something. I didn't want to be the guy that shows up and talks about what he did in high school or college and lived in his glory days. So I just put 100% of my effort into the opportunity I got as a receptionist at Learnit. And that's what I did. Now I look at it like that whole baseball thing was like a different person, and it's cool. It's cool running into these people who are like, oh, that's, you were one of the best hitters I've seen, or you were phenomenal here, this and that. And it's like, I don't, it's like totally different,
Yeah.
So I just stopped and moved forward. But what were you going to say?
Oh, no. I was going to say it's amazing how often or how frequently in our lives we actually shed our skins. And I actually agree with you. I think it's pretty cool that happens. I mean, we have these capabilities to achieve amazing things in our lives. And then even let those parts of us die at some point so we can achieve the next thing. I think there's a lot, at least I've found in my experience, there's been a lot of value in that to actually experience that growth. Have you found that, that philosophy that you have where you're just kind of like, look at a thing that's in front of you and just dive all the way in? Has that always been an effective strategy, or has it ever backfired?
Good question. I think that, sometimes, you got to have the courage to dive head first in to do it, and it's kind of like with writing my book, it's like, I'm not a writer, so I got kind of timid halfway through, like, what if I put this out and people think it's, it's embarrassing or whatever, but then I just did it, got it out there. Typically if I'm going to go for something, I'm either all in or nothing, so when I started, getting out, promoting my book and doing podcasts, I just said, I'm just going to do 100 of them. I'm just going to do it, and I'm one of those guys where I just want to, get the reps in, get the consistency in, and I'm fortunate at Learnit. I've got some, we teach presentation skills and executive presence, and I love feedback. And I've got these great members of my team, especially our head of product, Darren Bridget, who he watches a bunch of these and he'll say, hey, here's what you could have done better. You did this. And so you just dive in and you just keep learning and growing, And if you mess up, who cares? I mean, people are busy with their own lives, so you just you do your best to keep evolving and getting better.
Yeah, I like that. I like that philosophy because and it's consistent with, something I've read about. One of the philosophies you take to leadership too, which is when you build a team, that's not afraid to make mistakes as long as you learn from them, right? So, I mean, that may be a good tenet of Learnit. And to Learnit itself started out as more of a kind of a computer training kind of company. Has it evolved into more diverse training? Like, are you training people to develop in their careers? What does that look like right now?
Yeah, I mean, so Learnit has really evolved. We're a learning and development company, so we kind of want to help companies with all their skill building needs, and it has really evolved. And that's kind of a good story too when it comes to how we evolved. So yeah, for probably the first 10 years, we were known as a computer training company. But we wanted some of our customers were coming to us and saying, hey, can you help us with soft skills? And I don't really like that term. It's, leadership management, emotional intelligence. And so we started offering those trainings. And I had this woman who worked for a long time named Jennifer Albrecht, who's amazing. And, she started, and she was, at the time, we were in our late 20s. And we got into it and started building the classes. But she dealt with imposter syndrome. She's just like, I'm this cute 28-year-old. Am I going to be taken serious and building this content out? Where most of the people who are delivering these kinds of trainings are 60-year-old white guys who have been working at IBM for 20 years. Long story short, we went to a training at the Pentagon in Ritz-Carlton, Jen and I and a couple other people. And, they kept calling her up to participate and answer questions. And then Adam, I remember this like it was yesterday. We went for a walk around the block, and she said, she stopped and said, Damon, we can do this. I'm just as good as any of these people out there. So that really, and that was probably, 2010 or whatever. That was really a pivotal moment for us because we went back after that and we kind of shedded just a computer training company, and we can compete in this. And really, Jen especially cranked out a bunch of great content. And ever since then, I would say 75% of our business is helping mostly new leaders who are in a leadership position for their first time, or companies who turn to us because they want to build a stronger culture. So that's how we've evolved over the years.
I love that. And there's kind of like an implicit piece of wisdom in there that you had that, when you start getting questions from your customers to do more for them, A, it sounds like you're onto something, and B, it sounds like you have an opportunity to expand into a new thing where you might be able to add value. And it sounds like you kind of caught on to that. And was that self-awareness? Is that something that you hold on to, or have you been able to capture that in some way? If that question makes sense.
No, it makes sense. And, I think it goes both ways. For a while, we jumped at everything. Every time a customer wanted us to do something, we would start doing it. Well, that's not the best way to go about it. There's that great book that I'm sure you heard of by Jim Collins, Good to Great. And he talks about the hedgehog theory. And hedgehog theory is you got to find something that you can be, fantastic at, that you're passionate about, and that you can make money on. And so really, in the past 10 years, we've actually scaled back on what we actually offer and focused more. So we got rid of a lot of the highly technical training for IT people. We still do a lot of Microsoft Excel, that kind of stuff. But now we really honed in on what our core audience is, which is middle managers, individual contributors. So yeah, you want to listen to your clients and see what they need, but you also, I think you need to have the discipline on sticking with what your core strengths are. How about for you with your family business? Did you ever come in a situation where you trailed off in the wrong direction, or?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think, yeah, we've had it. I mean, having the history that we have as a 100-year-old company that is service based. I mean, one of our core values is we're committed to service. But, one of the challenges with that, I think you're right. It's a double-edged sword. When you give the service that customers want, they tend to ask you for more. And because you're a service-based company, you want to give more. And so you do. I feel that if you're not intentional in the way that you're saying, or you're not disciplined, and I love the word you use there, you can fall into that trap of doing too much, and then kind of losing that. And we still do fall into that trap today. We just need to, but we're more intentional about trying to make sure we're serving that right hedgehog concept, like you talked about. So yeah, it's definitely, I think it's definitely a sign of success and, a challenge if you have those kinds of questions. So,
yeah, I mean, you don't want to be the jack of all trades, master of nothing, and I have a pretty, 10-person sales team, and don't get me wrong, they want to make deals, right? But sometimes you can serve your client better by saying, this isn't what we do best. And you could be like an advisor for them. And you could say, but let me connect you with somebody who does this, and then they'll come back to you. They'll come back to you for your core products, and so it's better not to overpromise and underproduce.
Yeah. I want to talk about discipline a little bit, because I think that's a great topic to touch on. But I'd love to hear before we jump into that, how has that approach, that worked for you to really focus in and make sure? Have you seen and scale back what you're serving? Have you seen growth in the right way? Have you seen kind of a reduction in revenue? How has that looked for you since you've made that move?
Kind of both. We've had growth in the right way. Our margins have gone up, but we've seen a reduction in revenue. But some of the revenue is low margin revenue that we shouldn't be doing anyways. So but I think that it's helped streamline our business to be. I mean, we have a really good product, but even better. So we're all on the same page, speaking the same language, delivering the same content. We work across the board with companies of all sizes, large and small, across the country and throughout the world. And if we're working with a bunch of pharmaceutical companies, and we won't share what the specific companies are doing, but if we're really focused, and then, like you said, I like that, intentional. We could say, hey, here's some of the things that we're seeing that really help your industry. Here's where some of the challenges and struggles are, and that's a better way to serve the customers than just trying to go, grab everything out there.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to talk about discipline, because I have a theory that when a lot of times when we're afraid, we're afraid, or we're overwhelmed because of an uncertainty, or we're burned out, or a lot of these things that it becomes an obstacle in our lives. But one of the best ways to combat that is to implement discipline in your life. So I'd love to hear your perspective on discipline, on what that looks like in the world. How do you interpret discipline? How do you practice it in your own life today?
Yeah. Well, there's some areas that you're good at and some areas that you're not good at. I want to get, I need to get more disciplined in eating better, but one way that I interpret discipline, and it's kind of like what's helped me with overcoming the imposter syndrome, is I look at it from a 3-step approach. One, it's like I figure out, what do I need to get more disciplined on, right? Or what am I afraid of doing? And then I just work really hard at it. I focus on it, and I don't, what do you call it? If I stray in the wrong direction, I don't beat myself up too much over it. Hey, you know what? You made a mistake. Let's get back on track. So that's one way I do it. The other thing that's helped me, professionally, is I'm not a journalist, really, a journaler, but are you familiar with Michael Hyatt?
No.
He's a great productivity guy, and he has this thing called the full focus. And I went through one of his programs, and it really talks about, he has, I think it's like the vision compass or something. And especially for those of you out there listening who are small business owners, you have to get disciplined with your own time. So you should figure out what you should be doing, what you can delegate, automate, or get rid of. And he also, one of the tactics that I use, I talk about this in my book and I give him credit for it, is a big three. I have a big three: quarterly goal, weekly goal, and daily goal. And so I try to add them. I get disciplined. I write in my little journal, what are the three things that are most important to get done today? And I try to do those, like the Eat the Frog book. I try to get those done first, and then that, to me, that's discipline, because, you could spend the entire day, and you could be, especially, I run a company of 75 people, you got your, it's really easy to get busy and feel like you're doing a lot of things. And then at the end of the day, none of it, it's like you didn't get anything accomplished. So if I have my little book, I got it right here. If I have my, just check off what I got to get done today, but make sure that ties into my weekly goal, my 3 weekly goals, and then my monthly goal. And then every Monday, I carve out time and I reflect back on how the week went. What went well? What were my big wins? What didn't go well? What should I do more of? What should I do less of? And so staying consistent with doing that is what's helped me with discipline.
Hey everyone, I interrupt this program to introduce you to a powerful tool that will help you gain clarity on your vision and accelerate your growth and achievement. If you're listening to this show, it is likely that you have an exciting vision for your life. But the problem is that we often get caught up in the day-to-day. We get distracted, we face uncertainty, overwhelm, and self-doubt. And as a result, the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems insurmountable. And that's why I created a framework for how you can turn your vision into strategic, disciplined action that will accelerate your results in the next 90 days. I call it the Vision Reflection Retreat. It is a 2-day solo excursion designed to reignite passion and adventure into your busy life and realign your focus toward your why. This is the very same framework that I use every 90 days to reflect on my own life and my vision and set my goals for the next quarter. And it has been a game changer. And the good news is that I'm giving away this Vision Reflection Retreat guidebook for free when you sign up for my newsletter. Simply go to flowoverfear.com/retreat and download your free guide and enjoy the journey. That's huge. That's huge. So you have a monthly goal, a weekly goal, and then 3 daily goals that you just have to get done. That's correct?
Well, three of each.
Three of each. Oh, I gotcha.
3 main quarterly goals, 3 main monthly goals, weekly goals, and 3 daily goals. If you have too many goals, then forget it. You're not going to be able to keep track of everything. So it's like, what are your, and that really makes you kind of think about, on a quarterly perspective, like, just like, what are the 3 main things that I have to get done this quarter? And then you try to have your work relate back to that. And the other thing I kind of do on the side is I just kind of write down every morning, like, what I'm grateful for. Yeah, I'm grateful for Learnit, or my kids, my wife, so it's like, for somebody who's not a journaler, it's just a good practice. And none of this takes me more than 15, 20 minutes a day.
Yeah. And that's such great advice. I mean, it's so important, because I can absolutely relate to the idea that, as there's almost, it feels like, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, but there's almost 2 phases in life. There's a phase where you're trying to find things to do to add value. And then there's another phase where it kind of flips the switch a little bit. And then there's things that are being imposed on you that you have to almost block away from so that you can add value. Once you get to that level of responsibility, and where you're at right now, you almost have to kind of deflect a lot of the stuff that is not in the realm of moving forward, but is more of like, staying. And that's where that discipline comes in. Is that?
I got a question for you. Are you good at saying no?
No, I'm not good at saying no. In fact, that was one of the first times I've said no, in fact. So
yeah.
No, I need to do a lot better at it, to be honest. Yeah.
I'm getting better at it, but I'm a pleaser. I want to, I want to help people, right? But at some point your time just gets too busy. I got asked to be on a board, for something. for this startup out here, and I'm already on a board for the Little League. I'm already on a board for a business school, and I got 2 little kids, and so I met with the guy for coffee, and I just told him, I said, Mike, I don't want to let you down. You know what I mean? And it's just I just can't do it. And it was hard for me to say. You know what I mean? It was hard for me to say. But you know what he said? He's like, "Cool, thank you for telling me." And he's like, I would hate to bring you on and for you not to be able to be effective. So saying no has been hard, but I'm getting better at it, and people are pretty cool with it. Typically.
Yeah, that's really good to know, and I think that's good advice. I appreciate you asking me that question because it's definitely something I need to work on more. Because it kind of goes back to what you were talking about too, with regard to in the company. If we're saying yes to too many things, we're not being effective to anybody. We're diluting our focus.
Absolutely,
and it just doesn't work. Yeah.
So as a competitive guy, and I'm sure you are. As a competitive guy, I want to win all the time. Right. You know what I mean? So when opportunities would come in and maybe they didn't fit at work, I would say yes. I'd even probably tell the sales reps, let's discount the price. Let's win this deal. But over the last 5 years, I've kind of changed that approach. I'm like, let's focus on, like I said, what's most important, what's high margin, and work with. And also, I think it's important out there for listeners who are small business owners or whatever, find great clients. You want to work with clients who treat you as a partner, and not a-holes. There's that book, Don't Work with the, I think that's important too. Sometimes you have to, send some of your nickel and dime clients to your competitors.
Yeah. Do you feel like, coming from a background where you were kind of on the ground floor of this business when your dad started?
Day one, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So seeing it from that starting point, do you feel is that how a new, like if somebody's starting a business right now, is that how they should start? Should they start by saying no to all of the things that don't fit, or should they be saying yes and then kind of narrowing it down? What are your thoughts?
I think it depends on how far off of the main core business is. I think as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you got to kind of throw a wide net out there and see what sticks, and you also have to be really, I think it's important to be really curious and listen and see what people think. Even these days, when we release new products, Adam, new classes, and by the way, we do mostly virtual instructor-led training. So we have on-demand stuff, and it's mostly live. So a lot of times we just build the shell of the classes. We'll say, here's the outcomes, here's what the classes are, and we'll put it out there. We won't completely build it out until we get some kind of response to it. We'll put some MVPs, minimum viable products, out there. But as a new business owner, I think if it's within the realm of what you're doing, I think you should consider it, because it helps you understand if you're. That's where it goes back into being a learn it all versus know it all. You don't have all the answers. Know-it-alls have all the answers. Like, this is what we need to do. When to be, and I'm not going to listen to what everybody else says. Where a learn-it-all has a little bit more of a beginner's mind and more flexibility, and maybe surround themselves either with advisors or great teammates and customers, and who maybe will challenge you on your, what do they say? Strong opinions held lightly. So that's how I'd kind of look at it. It's like, maybe give it some thought, but if it's way out there and it's not something that you think you can do well, then forget it.
Yeah, I like that. It seems it's, that at that beginning stage, you're still doing a lot of testing. I like the idea of being curious. Curiosity is a solution to a lot of problems, especially fear. I think that it solves fear as well.
And one other thing I'd have to say for anybody out there considering to start a new business, I don't think you have to be like super disruptive, come up with something that doesn't exist. That's hard anyways, to try to explain to people what it is. Maybe find something out there like my dad did with Learnit. There was plenty of computer training companies out there. He just wanted to find a way to 10x, make it better, shorter classes, more engaging, so sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You could just make it a lot better.
Yeah. I love that advice. It's so good. And, you've touched on imposter syndrome a few times, mentioned that, that you've experienced that in the past. Do you find that you still experience that from time to time? And do you have any tools that you use to try to overcome it?
Totally. I think we all do, excuse me. And I think if somebody tells you they don't, they're not being honest, and and I learned this all the way back when I went to Arizona State, and I've used it ever since. And I have like a 3-step approach to imposter syndrome. First, this isn't one of the steps, but first you like identify what you're afraid of, what the inner critic in yourself, in your head's telling you. Step 1 is work hard. And I'm not saying, put in 10 to 14 hours a day, but work hard, Number 2 is, because there's no shortcuts. Number 2 is focus. If you're afraid of something, or you're, you're timid, but it's easy to procrastinate and try to do something else. It's like we talked about earlier. Oh, I'll work on this instead. But if it's important, focus. And then step number 3, I think, is once you've worked hard and you put in the preparation, then learn and let go. Let's say I'm relatively new to the keynote speeches, right? I've been doing them and I've been practicing, and I put in all the work. But when it's time to get up on stage or in a conference room and do it, I stop thinking about all that stuff. It's just like, I'm not thinking about when I was a hitter, the technique. You just got to go up there and hit. So you get up there, you do your best. I feel more confident knowing I prepared. I put in that deliberate practice, and I go up there, I let go, I give it my best shot. If it turned out great, fantastic. If it doesn't, let's make it a learning experience and do better next time. And don't beat yourself up so much. It's like, hey, I did my best. As long as you did do your best, and kind of go from there. So that's basically my approach when I'm dealing with fear or imposter syndrome or whatever you want to call it.
I really love that. So kind of to summarize, you identify what you're afraid of, in which case it might be it may be imposter syndrome for some reason, or it may be something else. But identify that, name it, work hard. I really like that. Focus and learn and let go. And don't beat yourself up. I love it.
Don't beat yourself up. And like I said earlier, sometimes, and me included, you really worry about what other people think. Well, other people might think about you for about 3 minutes, and then they go back to their own life, so don't beat yourself up. If you do the best you can, learn, get feedback. Don't be defensive on the feedback. One of the tips that I use to get feedback from people is I'll say, hey, did you have a chance to watch this? Can you watch this podcast I'm in? I don't think I answered this question very well, because it invites feedback, especially if I'm asking feedback from people who work for me, right? I don't want yes people. I want people who will be like, feel comfortable enough that they can give me their feedback, and then I thank them for it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a great piece of advice too, for anyone that's building a culture, is be willing to surround yourself with people that are willing to tell you no. So if you're hearing yes enough, that's scary. If that's all you're hearing, is you're just getting validated on whatever you're saying.
I was talking to this gentleman that I mentor who works for $100 million plus SaaS company, and it's the CEO has surrounded themselves with yes people. Everybody's a yes people, and everybody's afraid to say anything else. The company's possibly struggling. Where I think that great leaders realize that they're not the smartest person in the world. You want to surround yourself with great talent, diverse talent, that come from different backgrounds. Give them the opportunity to share their ideas. You may not take all their ideas all the time, but give them the opportunity to give you their ideas and thoughts. And when something gets implemented, Adam, I think it's important. This is another thing I learned from a terrible coach. I had doesn't matter who it was, but like whenever we succeeded, he'd take all the credit. He'd say, "Oh, it was a great pitching change. It was a strategy." And then if things went poorly, then he would say, well, Damon struck out with 2 guys on, in the newspaper. How are you going to win a game like that? My approach is you want to make the wins about your team, give them the credit, put them up front, because if you do that, then they're going to always want to continue to bring new things to the table and innovative ideas. And if you just take all the credit, they'll just be like, yeah, whatever. And then on the other hand, if things don't go well, I think it's the leader's responsibility to step up and say, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, in my business, and I'm sure maybe it's probably like with you, it's like at the end of the day, if things don't go well, it's on me. This is it. There's no place else to blame or to look, And so, that's what I think.
Yeah. So it sounds like the solution to, because I think that answered my next question, which was the solution to, or how do you build a culture that creates people who are willing to tell you or give you the feedback that you need, not necessarily what you want. And it sounds like it is building a culture around allowing people to, or celebrating the people who for the good things that happen, the good ideas, and taking responsibility when bad things happen as the leader.
That is right. A step before that, though, is to build. I think that is that is key. And I'm a big fan of hiring for potential over experience too. Because somebody could have 10 years of sales experience and they can at a Microsoft sized company, but that's not gonna do too well here. So you gotta have right fits. And that sometimes takes place in the interview process. And I've been really fortunate. The favorite thing about my company is the talent we have, and a lot of the people that work for me today are referrals from the Learnit alumni. Because they know, they're like, this is Damon's business. We have about 60 employees. We know what kind of people work well here and what kind don't. And if you bring in and you allow for toxic behavior, it's gonna ruin your culture. So, and then and especially like in a small business, it's easier now that people are all remote, but it was really hard to compete. I'm in San Francisco, right in the financial district of San Francisco, competing against a Salesforce or all these big Google. But the way I was able to get great talent was bring them in early on in their career, give them the tools and resources they need to be successful, let them fail, and support them. Let them try things. There's things that they're not going to get an opportunity to start off, and then they can move on to the Salesforce or Google, but they're all still part of our community.
I really love that idea that you're willing to develop employees to the point that you're willing to let them go to the competition in the spirit of their growth.
Maybe not competition. Maybe not.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But they don't typically leave Learnit to go. We've had a lot of employees go to Google, go to Salesforce. I mean, we don't compete with those guys, but I look at it as, and I didn't mean to cut you off, we're more of a team than a family. I mean, look, I have great relationships but I think as a business owner or a leader or manager of a team, it's your responsibility to put together an elite team, the best players on the field at that time. And there are sometimes you outgrow the director of operations who helped get Learnit to X million of dollars, maybe wasn't the best fit for the next stage of growth, right? And there's other times I've had some of my best employees who are dear friends of mine who were here 10, 15 years, like this one guy named Jim. I'm just like, you've maxed out here. You need to move on. And he's like, oh, Dee, it's hard to go out and get a new job. Just kind of helped him do it. And he's crushing it where he's at now. But yeah, sometimes people need to move on. Sometimes, but he was just going through the motions. So I think it's a leader's responsibility to be aware of what's going on with their team, or have managers that can be aware of it. And and you can't get upset at people to leave, especially if they leave in a good way, because grass isn't always greener. I've had, and this is for your listeners out there, I've had so many people who've left Learnit who've come back a couple times, and they're always more loyal and dedicated because they're just, especially for people early on in their career, they don't know what other cultures are like. And they'll come back and say, I didn't, I wasn't given the same opportunities. My manager was terrible. I didn't. So I think that's part amicably and stay in touch.
Yeah, you touched on something there with regard to the team versus family, and I really wanted to sink into that because I've struggled with that as well, with the idea of working in a family business, a longer term family business. But there are some families that I think the idea of creating a family in the company, and there's debate around that, is almost misguided in a way. You almost want to create that team. I like that aspect because a team is created to win, to thrive, to grow, to succeed. Families aren't always that, I mean, some families are great, some might not be. So
hey, I think all families have their funny stories,
Sure.
we'd love to hear offline. I mean, 100-year company. So was that started by like your great grandfather or something like that?
Yeah, it was my great grandfather. He passed it on to his 4 sons, and so he had four sons, and then those 4 sons had their kids, and so on till now we're in the 4th generation, which is the second cousins generation, really. So there's a lot of family floating around.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And a lot of legacy. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think families all have their stories, and I've I was honored and to be able to work for my idol, my dad. I mean, he didn't actually say work at Learnit, but given the opportunity to be there. But I've learned over the years that, you got to, as a great leaders, you got to make tough decisions, bold decisions. And sometimes that means, making personnel changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I think that makes sense for the greater good of the company and the long-term legacy.
Because think about everybody else you have on your team. I mean, I look at the 60 people who work at Learnit, like I'm responsible for helping them pay their mortgage, their benefits, all of this. If I let this one person, who maybe is not, towing the, not performing or toxic or whatever, it's like it could affect everybody else, right? So you owe it to. I always look at it like you owe it to your overall team to do what's in the best interest of your organization.
Yeah. 100% agree. And that's so good. It's great advice as far as, from the company perspective. I'm glad we were able to take this conversation in the direction of how, to create that culture and kind of get through those decisions. Because a lot of those decisions are based in being afraid to make the change or having the courage to do the right thing. And yeah, so in your own personal life, I know we talked offline a little bit about you have 8 years sober now. You haven't been drank for 8 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
12 years for you. No, it was a decision I made. It was I never got in trouble for drinking, but growing up, especially in a financial district, I mean, drank a lot. You know what I mean? Drank a lot, and I made a decision that that's not the kind of life I wanted to live anymore. And especially I was, getting married, and I wanted to raise a family, and I honestly couldn't imagine raising my 6-year-old and my 2-year-old hungover, And so I'm really proud of that decision. I'm totally fine to be around people who like to drink and do whatever. I'm not telling, everybody's different, Getting back to discipline, I'm like one of those all or nothing type of guys, right? So it's like, that's just how it is, and I know that. I'm self-aware enough about that for myself. And so, yeah, no, I mean, I'm, happy.
So was that a decision that was just, it was kind of, like I'm done completely, this is it? Or did you think about it for a while, or how did it come to pass that you just made that decision?
I thought about it for about 9 months. And honestly, I didn't really share it with anybody, until about 2 weeks before I decided to pull the trigger on it, and at that point, what I did is I actually first told my mother and my best friend, and I just said, who's also sober, and him and I had great stories together, back in the day. I'm sure like you do. And I just told him, and I just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And he's like, hey, well, whatever help you need from me, if you want to, go to a meeting or whatever it is you want to do, I'm here. But I wanted to, I think you probably talk about this a lot, right? It's like, if you share something with somebody, you're most likely able to do it. And then I told my wife, and, at first it was, it was challenging for her because, she missed having a couple glasses of wine at dinner. And she's she's super disciplined. She could have a glass of wine or two and stop. And couldn't, at first couldn't understand why that I wasn't like that, But I'm grateful that I have such a loving and caring wife who supported me. And after about probably 3 to 6 months, she's just like, yeah, I think it's better than the alternative, So, and the funny thing is too, I don't go out and preach it, but I've had like 2 or 3 buddies who have also quit, and it's almost like the over 40, it's kind of cool. You went out, you did your thing. And, now at this phase of your life and you just don't do it. You just, focus in other areas. So, yeah. So, hey, and again, for your listeners, if you're struggling with that, if I can do it and Adam can do it, you can do it too, and if you try, I was lucky. I never slipped. Did you ever slip, or did you?
So I think in the last 12 years, no, I haven't. But before that, there were periods of sobriety that I had where I did not take on the emotional healing that I needed to actually to get through permanence. And and so, yeah, I slipped a number of times when I tried to do it before that, and it didn't end well.
Yeah. My best friend, slipped multiple times. And he just told me, he's like, it just took me to the point where it couldn't just be about everybody else wanted me to do it. It's like, I had to want to do it,
yeah,
and he's been sober now for probably 11 years, and, yeah, but I never slipped. I just, but, and that's not makes me any better than anybody else. But if you do, just get right back on it. Hey, that's over with. Don't dwell on it. Just try it again. Just keep trying until you get it right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We're human. I mean, we make mistakes.
We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah. We're all subject to that. And I think that, for me or anybody else who's in that situation of sobriety, we're one drink away or one slip away from just kind of going back into it. And that's not, that's the human reality. And, it's okay. Like you say, we can always get back on the bus, but just don't drink today. And if you need help, know that help is out there. And I love what Damon said. If we could do it, you definitely could do it, because I know how bad I was. And it was something I never thought that I could do. So, but I think it's encouraging to see that idea that so many people now are just choosing to be sober. Like, maybe not because of any problem, but they're just choosing it, which is pretty great.
Yeah. I think the younger generations drink less too. They may have other issues, I have a friend who's a principal and says that there's some pills and stuff like that they're going around. But I just think the majority of the younger kids don't drink as much. And I'm happy to see a lot of my friends who, we've never been in rock and roll or anything like that, but, had a little bit of a rock and roll fun lifestyle, has been able to, change directions. And I just think part of it's just, you got 2 kids, I got 2 kids, and I just want to be a great dad and great husband, and that would be a big roadblock in getting there.
Yeah,
roadblock.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's and that sobriety opens it up so much more. And speaking of being a father, I want to close this out and obviously thank you for being here. But I also want, as a father, one of your obligations, is to bring that dad humor to your kids and the dad jokes. So I wanted to ask if you have any particular things you do to embarrass your kids, or if you have a dad joke, maybe you can tell us that you're aware of to close us out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I do a lot to embarrass my kids, and I think it's hilarious. And my little daughter mimics her mother. And one of those things is like, I'll just like sing like Elsa songs in front of her friends, and she's just like, "Daddy, stop! Stop it! You're embarrassing me, Daddy." And but my dad joke, and I got this from her, and I've heard this so many times, is she would say, when's the best time to go to the dentist? And then people would say, when? And she'd say 2:30.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic. It never gets old, and you deserve a plaque for that one.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, they're characters.
Yeah. Well, Damon, thank you so much for being here. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom. And if any of the listeners out there want to find your book, the Learn It All Leader Mindset, Traits, and Tools, you could find that on Amazon. And Damon, where else can people find you, and how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Well, I'd say, connect with me on LinkedIn, Damon Lembi. My website for Learnit is learnit.com. And if you go to our website and you find a class like Excel or emotional intelligence or coaching for managers, and you send me a message on LinkedIn, I'll send you a code for a free $250 class. I just would love your feedback to see how it goes. So yeah, some people have been taking advantage of it. So I'm proud of what we have to offer. And yeah, so hit me up on LinkedIn, Damon Lembi.
That's super generous. And we'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Damon. You're just an incredible story. And you're doing such good things in the world. Thank you for that. And congratulations on all your success. Thanks for joining me today. And everybody else out there, thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular, and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time.